The Research Left Behind with Professor Ashley.
Hello, and welcome to The Research Left Behind. This is the only Twitch stream, YouTube show, and podcast, depending on your mode of access, that sweeps the cutting room floor to bring you the research that got left behind. My name is Professor Ashley, and yes, I'm a real professor who teaches people how to make video games over at NYU. But tonight I am joined by two other professors. Tracy Fullerton and Matt Farber are here to talk about the research left behind on their book, The Well-Played Game. Yay, physical copy. If you're watching the live stream, you can type !book into chat to get a link to buy the book from MIT Press. If you are watching or listening after the fact, make sure you check your show notes and for those links. Faculty, staff, and students, please join me in saying thank you to Professors Tracy Fullerton and Matt Farber for being on the show and telling us all about the research they had to leave behind in the well-read game. Hello, welcome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Oh, this is amazing. Nightbot is doing its job. So periodically the book link will appear in chat as well. So chat can go and read your book. Thank you so much for being here. This is super exciting. Before we get started asking all the questions, we have to do our conflict of interest disclosures, which is a segment of the show where we get to talk about how we know each other, because I think grad students are always mystified at how small game studies truly is and how we all know each other. Or, Matt, we just met, but you know what? We know each other now, right?
Yeah.
It's a fun joke because we don't actually have an HR department here. We just have our moderator, Chris. Hi, Nifty Chris. Hi, moderator.
Hi, Chris.
Okay, so do you remember how we met? Matt and Tracy?
Well, Matt's is easy.
We were having Starbucks on Wilshire, and we all were online together. I'm just making that up. How the three of us met, or how me and Tracy met?
Actually,
the three of us actually, the three of us met an email, but you reminded me that we actually met at Indiecade in the before times. So Indiecade 2019, which, as I recall, was at Santa Monica College, and that was a really great one. I was mentioning they had such great night games there, and I remember they had like this demon couch. It was so awesome. This demon couch would be like roaring at people, and when you sat on it, it's just like this crazy, vibrating, angry couch. It was great. Indiecade is always great.
Indiecade is always great. So, if you're not familiar, there's this festival it's like an indie film festival, but for games. And you just see some of the coolest cutting edge stuff there. So that was really fun. All right, what are you two drinking?
I'm drinking Dodger Blue water.
I'm not drinking anything, but I guess I'm aspirationally having a Mai Tai in a tiki room.
I love that answer. I saw a TikTok, because I'm chronically online, wherein someone said that they were riding, I can't remember, the M train or something, when they found out that Mamdani got elected, and the person next to them was drinking water out of a Dunkin' Donuts cup, and they were like, "Oh, that's so relatable." And the guy was like, "No, this is vodka soda, but I'm celebrating." And I was like, never change New York. Love you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's get into the research left behind, the well-read game. So first of all, huge congratulations to both of you, because publishing a book, chat knows, not an easy task.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Lots of stages of peer review too at MIT Press.
Yeah, it's not just the writing, right? There's the whole thinking of it. There's the peer review at all stages. So yeah, just happy to be here, as they say.
Right? If any book gets published, it's basically a miracle. We also say about games,
especially
right?
these days. Right?
Exactly.
Especially that it's a miracle that there are books. I'm just, so happy that we live in a world where there are still books.
Oh, I mean, there was this comeback of physical media, and when I was at Games for Change in June, the hotel was right around the corner from the Strand, and I was there, I think, every night.
I love the Strand so
Nice.
much. It's such a good bookstore.
I used to work in a bookstore, not as cool as the Strand, but I used to work in a bookstore, and I thought that's what I was actually going to do. I thought I actually was going to run a bookstore.
Really?
My life changed. So, yeah.
It's a good retirement
That's what I thought
job.
I would wind up doing. Yeah.
I could talk to you about that all night, but we have to talk about your book.
Okay.
But also, pro
Okay.
tip, if anyone's going to the Strand, and Matt, this is a little bit too late for you, but if you go around the corner from the Strand, not on Broadway, what's the other street it's on? I have to Google Maps it. You can look this place up. It's called Unregular Bakery, and they do the most amazing pastries for like $6. Like a pastry and a coffee is like $10, but they're super bougie. It's delicious. Best thing ever. Pro tip.
Wow. Nice.
But that's not why you're here, chat. You're here to learn about the research that got left behind. And this book is amazing because it starts with the most tearjerker opening, I think, of any book that we've had on the program, at least, if not any games book in general. So it's this amazing quote from this 15-year-old about playing Journey, the game Journey, which I know Chat is a huge fan of. Playing Journey with her dad as he's terminally ill. And in her own words, she talks about how as the game's ending, it helps her father make peace with the fact that his life was ending. And so you literally start the beginning of the book with an end, right? It's a very powerful rhetorical strategy. It's a very powerful hook to get you into the book. How did you choose that to be the opener?
Well, it's funny that you should actually mention that because we didn't have it there for a long time. And that was a comment that came back before we sent it to MIT for review. We actually sent it to trusted friends for review. And that was a comment that came back actually from Tara McPherson, who's a digital medias and cinematic arts scholar at USC. And she said, you have some beautiful quotes and stories all throughout this book, but you start with theory, and she kind of was like, you should think about starting with something that will be, really emotional. And it was right. It was the right choice.
And I think with that quote, I think like reflecting back on it, not to get too meta about like our book about reflecting, but it's sort of like when we describe the book to people, they always like give us like they instantly get it, like, oh yeah, it's like we're stating something that's been there all along in a way, but not talked about. It's like that's what's left on the floor. And that's one of the things that resonated about that quote is that that's there, but it's just not talked about. It's more about like, how do I beat this level in a game?
Yeah, it's there already. I mean, that's the thing is that in a way, when we asked people to send us their readings, everybody had readings, right? And we got a lot of input because this kind of experience of games is already there. It's just not valued, right? And so that quote, obviously came from the folks at that game company. And, it was a quote that Genova had talked about in a talk. And then there was a video online where that young player was re-interviewed. She had sent a letter to the folks at that game company, and he had talked about it. And then I think it was Sony maybe had re-interviewed her and got her to sort of elaborate, I guess, on the experience. So it's all there, and we've been living this way with games forever. We just keep those feelings to ourselves. And part of this book is a call for valuing that and talking about it, sharing it, and making it part of the way that we think about what makes a great game experience.
Yeah. Yeah, which is for me, and a lot of my audience tends to come from the human computer interaction, HCI, UX, games user research, all about how people approach games from accessibility, usability standpoint. So this is a total different approach to the same problem, which is why the book is so super interesting for folks like me. I wanted to ask you about the games that you chose. So we opened with Journey, but the book also talks about games like Unpacking, Braid, Gone Home, Lost Words. And I wondered if you had a selection criteria going in, or how you landed on these games as exemplary for being well read.
It's so scientific. It's games we liked.
That's legit.
I mean,
It's qualitative.
no, I mean seriously.
Convenient sampling.
We did it's funny. When I was thinking about doing this talk with you today, Ashley, I kind of opened up our folder and I was sort of poking around to look at our process a little bit. And I remember we started recording our conversations together at a certain point. Do you remember that, Matt? We were like, oh my God, we're talking about everything. We have to just record this and then do speech recognition on it. That's our notes, right? And basically the way we did it was we just started talking about ideas and games, and then we'd actually talk about our experiences of games. And when we would circle around something and have a lot of conversation, then it would become obvious, right? Mm-hmm. Unpacking was obvious. It was like I actually think it's the best example, because if you don't read Unpacking as you play, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
It's literally just clicking. So it became obvious that it was the perfect example, because without the idea that we are all reading games, it is a nothing. And clearly that game is not nothing. Clearly that game has moved a lot of people and been, really influential. So so I'm like, okay, well, if it's an example that everyone does this, then it's sort of the perfect example. And so that's that's a reason to start with that.
I think also, so Tracy and I worked on Tracy's Walled in a Game, the education version curriculum. And I've worked on other curriculum before. I've worked on What Remains of Edith Finch curriculum with Paul DeVarcy. I also was on this team that wrote film curriculum for Ava DuVernay for Origin. It's origin101.org if you want to check it out. And but developing all that is like this lot of conversation, and it's almost like a book club. So it's always talking about our own experiences and what we bring to a game. And I guess we didn't want to define, like, it's like tough, like to define even a game, let alone a game that could be read in our approach, right? But we approached it as a spectrum, I suppose, of different, like Candy Crush wouldn't be as much of a, projecting yourself into that interaction as it would be for like Edith Finch, for instance. And yeah, I guess a game would have to have the similar literary, like, I don't know, requirements, devices, something like that, that for the same reason you would bring a book into a classroom. It has to have enough, I think, nuance to it, perhaps. But I don't like quantifying things. That was something
I know. I was going to say, though, that, some of the people who wrote to us, I was thinking of the example of of, Puzzles and Dragons, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, some of the people that wrote to us about action, shooter games, right? And so I I feel that there's no there's no criteria that says this kind of game can be read and this kind of game can't be read. Some games suggest themselves more easily, and that is the reason for starting with something like Unpacking, because it suggests that you must read this game aesthetically in order to get anything out of it. Same with what, people sort of pejoratively call walking simulators.
Yeah.
You can't get anything out of a walking simulator if you don't put anything in.
Yeah.
And if you don't do any of that emotional, aesthetic work, then it's what they say. It's quote unquote boring. But if you do the work, right? If you do the work, then it's fantastic, right? And so there are games that I guess prove our point very well.
So
and that's one thing. Yeah.
I'm going to show. So this is the screenshot that you have in the book from Unpacking, which is like this isometric view. You click on boxes and you put stuff in a house as you move. But one of my other favorites here is you have Beaver Creek from Halo, right? And you talk about hiking in Halo. Yeah. So I
love Beaver Creek.
I like
shout out to Vegito and my whole clan. We've spent many an hour on Beaver Creek.
I love the juxtaposition.
And Foundation. I just want to say, Rockets on Foundation. We spent many an hour there as well.
I love.
But that's just it. I think we had a conversation maybe with, I don't know, maybe it was when we had the call with Jim G, like the book release thing. But I don't remember any of the puzzles in Portal 2, but I remember exactly where I was, the age of my son at the time, the story. I remember those things, of my life at that point.
Oh, yeah. I love the juxtaposition because I think sometimes as game scholars and game developers, we can fall into this trap of maybe trying to define the well-played game as something highbrow or really classical music is the only valid, right? And
yeah.
And that's not what you've done with this book, which is why I love the Halo example, to be like, yeah, actually, you know what? Halo could be read in this really interesting way. Let's make it a nature sim. Love it.
Absolutely.
I think we're going to circle back to that.
Hiking in Halo was our, but we did it after we played. We would play these rough and tumble games, and then we would hang out afterwards in the same way that if you just went outside and roughhouse in the grass, and you might lay down afterwards and look at the clouds and talk about life, right? So yep. I think games can hold all of those things, all of those feelings, and a game like Halo, especially the the way they allowed for the customization of the sort of private game rules and things like that, it made a space that we felt like we could make our own, and therefore it was okay if we just went wandering and hiking around. I
think by foregrounding play like that over the game as designed, right, or intended. It's we also came at this idea of reader response theory, right? Is also a playful act because you're playing with these ideas in your mind. You're thinking back to connections, personal connections to the experience, and all of those things are playful. And that might be triggered. Well, it's not even it's such a loaded word. It might be I don't know, I'll say triggered by the game on the screen creates your mind wandering and you're thinking about all these things. And then you decide to do other sorts of playful things in the world of the game, right?
Yeah, evoke maybe is the better word that you're looking for, because that's the word that Louise Rosenblatt uses when she talks about reader response, right? This idea that the text, the relation, that meeting between the text and the reader, and in our case the game and the player, that it evokes a certain sort of, experience that's very specific and unique to that person and all that they bring with them to that moment and that game and all that it brings with it to that meeting. And so, there's this really beautiful sort of magic that happens when a player meets a game at a particular moment in their life. And, later on, you might come back and play that game and it's an utterly different experience, right? But that moment when you're playing it, you can read that and we say, write about it and clearly, sort of document your own feelings, your responses, so that can become a part of your sort of play history, right? And then later on, when you look back on that, or if you play that game again, you realize you have a completely different experience. You're like, wow, how I've grown, how I've changed. Look at the things I've learned.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good point of situating the gameplay within your life. And I think that brings us to our next question, which is, what does it mean to be well read or well played in the context of gaming?
It's a higher consciousness.
Yeah, that's right. You got that. Wait, what are you drinking again? That Mai Tai? Yeah, that's a little Mai Tai going on there. That's a little Mai Tai talk.
I mean, someone clip that and send it to NPR because I feel like that's NPR material.
Yeah. Well, okay, so to take the question that you're asking seriously, it's funny because we quote the Well Played series of books, right? We quote them in saying what their definition of well played is, and that those series of books say, and I don't have it right in front of me, but it basically says to be well played is to have played many, many games and to have played them, expertly, basically, right? To play their systems to a very deep level. And what's interesting is what we're referencing, though, because the book is referencing another book called the Well Played Game by Bernie DeGovan. But what Bernie meant when he said the well played game was something entirely different. He was saying a well played game is a game that makes us well, that makes us whole, that makes us part of a better community, a better self, right? So it's not about the game and it standing in judgment of us. It's about what the experience of playing that game gives to us in our lives and gives to our communities, right? So we're taking that, I think, like one step further. It's like we're not saying that to be well read in games, to read a game well, is to have played or read a lot of games. And we're not saying that it means to have played the games to their nth degree, to have beaten them, to have, sort of mastered their systems. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that to be well read, in this regard, to read a game well, is to have deeply experienced it, to have, kind of looked at that moment, that meeting between you and the game and reflected on it deeply, to have lived it deeply, to have articulated to yourself, what that means and what it brought to you and what you brought to that moment.
That is an amazing definition. Do you have anything to add?
Give me a Mai Tai.
Yeah. I guess I would say that I think it's we've seen this in other media, so I think a comparison would be somebody who reads a lot of books or watches a lot of cinema and is reflective to think about how those different media and art forms have changed them as a person. I mean, I don't want to leave out like live theater, art, and how it's how they become introspective. I think that's important. I mean, we can think about like I have this isn't like I didn't make up this exercise, but in a course I teach on new literacies, I have students make it's called a multimodal memoir, and it's basically like a slideshow, and they put all the different media forms that have shaped who they are as a person. And I think it's important to stop and, you know, reflect and think about what were those, books and films and theater performances and so on that have made you what you are today.
Mm. Yeah, and on that aspect of reflections, one of the things that I've been thinking about just kind of in general daily life is we all have played a dud before, right? And this isn't the point of this question isn't to name and shame. It isn't to, dunk on a particular game or what have you. But at the same time, we've also played a game that we were, at least I should speak for myself. I have played many games that I was embarrassed to like, right? Like, oh, this is like me going into McDonald's and being like, "Mwah, amazing food, like 10 out of 10, gold stars. This is a really good chicken nugget." But sometimes you just want a really good chicken nugget, right? So on
Sure.
the concept of, the well-read game isn't necessarily about being highbrow. It's not necessarily about games that make you whole or games that make you well. I wondered if there was a game that you all discussed at some point during the conceptual phase of this book. And, Tracy's like, "Oh my gosh, this game is amazing. You have to go play it." And then Matt's like, "That game sucked." Or vice versa. Or like this, Halo? What? You want to write about Halo? What was your chicken nugget and what was a game that was a dud?
I could say this, that just by virtue of what we do, we play a lot of sad games. Like a lot of these games, like, oh, great, another game that's mapped to grief. There's a lot of those too. It's not just the
Yeah.
ones in our book. There's a lot of games that are just really sad, and I mean, there are plenty of times that I will play. I mean, right now I'm playing, Spider-Man on PlayStation because it's not sad. I mean, I can play, games that are
But do you reflect on it, Matt?
not too terribly. I don't know. But there was one game I guess I don't know. There was a game we discussed was Marvel's Guardians of the
I was going to think
Galaxy.
about it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that got really good reviews at the time. But I think there was another Marvel game that wasn't as good that came out, and it kind of like took their sales, or the
But we
characters
did
didn't look like
actually
the movie.
wind up. We included part of Marvel's because you liked the part. Uh, didn't isn't that the one that we included? Sorry, my cat is here and she just wants
It's okay.
attention. She's just
Well,
gonna get it.
it's like, well, I guess Spider-Man does this too, and so does the Miles Morales one. All those games, they do have a break where it becomes a walking simulator.
Yeah, that's
So
what I was gonna say. Yeah.
yeah, so in Guardians, like you do listen to 80s music and you do go through his mom's house and stuff. And that same thing happens in the Spider-Man game. So what we see is that like some of the AAA games maybe like just becoming more nuanced, or they're like taking these
Mm.
things from indie games as interludes, which those are moments where it is more introspective.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it works really well with story beats. Like I'm playing Last of Us Part Two right now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not all like like hiding and like shooting and all that sort of thing, which is fun, or crafting, right? But there's the conversations and all those little things that go into the story itself. I mean, I guess that's
Right.
like the origin of some walking simulators. Like, what if that was the game, right? But that is still in.
Are you
I
learning
mean,
to play guitar, Matt?
yeah, I have been
Yeah.
doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I think that's just by the way, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but I think that is a beautiful mechanic, and I could
Mhm.
see I could have seen
Especially
that
with a
ending up
controller, like
on the cutting room floor, except for it to me that becomes a wonderful metaphorical moment. So that guitar symbolizes um, Joel and Ellie's relationship in a lot of ways to me. And so that mechanic, even though it's in some ways you could say, okay, this doesn't belong in a game like this, right? But it's so wonderful. First of all, it is very reflective. And second of all, it's a beautiful, almost literature-like, sort of symbol of their relationship. This is actually, you're basically listening to how we wrote the book. Talking about the games that we played and the games and how we felt about them.
So chat is demanding, not even requesting, but demanding
what are
to
they
see
demanding?
your cat. To see your cat.
Oh.
Ella,
and
you want to come here? Come here, baby.
Oh,
She's scared now because she doesn't usually get to come up. Come here.
Your cat listens to you? What's that like?
Yeah, she comes here. Jump up. You can do it. Now she's not going to do it because everybody's watching.
Tracy, I don't know if it was Richard or not, but during the pandemic, wasn't there like a Zoom game jam at USC? And like one of the way to get points was if a cat jumped in the frame of your camera?
Yes, that was Jeff.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Okay, everybody wants to see you. They all want to see you. Here she is.
We see the baby.
Here she is. This is Ella. Yes.
Oh, see? Ella.
She's like, who are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
Ella's amazing.
Yes.
Incredible. Oh. Thank you for indulging us.
You can go. Absolutely. Now that you've got her up here, though, you understand that she's not going to go away. Okay.
We were having these really deep conversations about games, and then I would see like a cat's tail like go across the screen.
Like a shark fin. Podcast listeners, the cat's
the hilarious thing is there's actually two. So Ella has a sister who looks just like her. So there's two. Yeah.
So let's take a step back. I feel like mentally we're ready now because we got a dose of cuteness to now talk about grief in games, and particularly in your game, Tracy. So, like the opening quote with Journey, Chapter 3 talks about a really depressing experience in Walden, a game. So in the game, you're a caretaker or housekeeper, and one of the things you do is you pick up toys as a way to earn currency. But at one point, the character goes around picking up toys after the death of the family's son and is not awarded currency because it isn't a task, but it's symbolic of the caretaker wanting to tidy away toys to spare the family more grief and heartbreak over seeing the dead child's belongings. So this is obviously you can just, even through the description in the book, I could see in my head what the gameplay would be like, and also that gut punch that you feel, right, when you realize what's happening when you don't get your pay for the day, and you find out and everything sinks in. So one of the things about affect that these grief examples seem to make it more apparent. So I wondered if you had thoughts on why that is. Why is grief so effective, right?
Okay, so this is such a big question. One of the things I will point out is that's an extremely small moment in a 6-hour-long game. And in fact, it was intentionally made very subtle and nuanced because we don't tell you that you're not going to get paid. All we do is we take away the pay and the sound effect of pay. The sound effect is like the clinking of coins, right? And you could, if you were not paying attention, not reading the game, basically just go around, pick up the toys like as a rote sort of exercise and assume that all was happening as usual. And I think that many people do. They're just click, 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 and picking up toys, and they keep going, right? The quote you're referring to is a player on a Steam player, I think it was. I can't remember where I got the quote, but anyways, where the quote came from, who noticed that this was the case, right? So they were paying deep attention in the way that we're trying to suggest that you should, paying deep attention to the way that the game was essentially treating them, rewarding them or not rewarding them in this case, right? So we didn't want to be maudlin about it. We didn't want to say, oh, you don't get paid because of the grief, right? We just took it away on that day, and that's it. We just took away the feedback response on that day and tried to make it subtle. Okay, so that was the first thing. Is there's actually much more that's not about grief in the game. That particular season of the game, which is the deep, dark winter, there's no light. It's all very dark. That is the sort of hardest, most challenging part of the game, and that is where the grief lies. In the other, 7 seasons of the game, there's a lot of joy and sort of exploration and discovering of kind of beauty. And so you have to have contrast in life, though. So that's why, as the year continues, that we built in the contrast of these differing emotions. So I don't think it's fair to say that everything's about grief in these games. First of all, most of these games set up characters who are experiencing life, and in life, one of the things that happens to us is we encounter difficulties, and we find a hard time getting through them. So that is dramatic. That's the essence of drama, is that we have a hard time getting through things. And I think that's one of the reasons you see it a lot, is that when we go to make a game about difficult things, one of the difficult things in life that there is grief. But there are other difficult things. There's different kind of changes that we go through. I mean, like, look at a little game like Florence. We didn't include Florence, but we could have included Florence, right? Florence is a great game about a relationship that first has great joy and connection, and then, no spoilers, hopefully, but goes through hard changes, right? And you could say that's grief, but I would say that's just a difficult emotion, right? In the chat, they're asking what game we're talking about, and I said, so I'm talking about Florence right now. The comment about why so many of the games that we have readings of discuss grief, well, that may be having to do with more like Matt and I's games that we like. I don't know, it's funny because I didn't even notice it, and
it might also be because, I mean, grief. I mean, there's these stages of grief, and the stages of grief can have an overlap with the hero's journey, and the hero's journey works really well with some story structure in a game. So we write a lot about lost words beyond the page, which has a hero's journey and stages of grief, but there are intersections when you're the hero going through these challenges.
Yeah, I find that when I'm thinking of or when I was going through the games that you mentioned in the book, I think I played almost all of them, and I played many of them on stream. And one of the things that stood out to me is the points where I cried, particularly on stream while playing the games, is like super memorable. And I think with this question, I was trying to suss out whether or not it was the embarrassment that stood out of crying publicly over, a video game, or if it was something more like about the human condition and about remembering difficulties. So I think in your response,
grief is like one of those things, like we don't talk about enough as society. So, I mean, building this but we all go through grief, or we know we're going to at some point go through grief. Right? So that's why games can be an interesting rehearsal space for difficult emotions.
Yeah.
And if you can make it through that in a game, maybe you've got the tools to do that when we know it's eventually going to happen. It's like that quote from Sontag about the two kingdoms, we're the kingdom of the well and the kingdom of the sick, and we know eventually we're going to be in the other kingdom, right?
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, so let's move on to more fun question mark topics.
Less grief, more fun.
Yeah.
Get those Mai Tais out. Come on, quickly, quickly.
I know. I was thinking about Neva, that game. Oh, okay. So you talk about negotiated and oppositional ways to read games, which I just love this discussion because it acknowledges the dynamics and also the kind of personalities that go into reading a game well and reading a game deeply. So I wanted to ask you about some of your favorite examples of oppositional play that you experienced when writing the book, or people told you about, because I think that's super fun, like hiking in Halo. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, mine are like kind of a lot of them are in the book, to be honest. So it sounds a little bit repetitive, but I guess hiking in Halo was a good example. Just not fighting, just exploring and using that beautiful space as a place to talk with friends who are far away. But we also include some, I think, some examples from open world games, which I think are ripe for oppositional play. Right, we have an example of a guy who's like a ornithologist, right, who goes around um, uh, taking pictures of all the birds in Red Dead Redemption 2. And just that's how he plays, right? That's his way he enjoys that game. And I think that's a brilliant and wonderful way to enjoy that game, right? I personally enjoyed the original Red Dead Redemption because I just like to go uh, ride my horse in the desert. And that's why at night, right?
Yeah.
I like to ride my horse in the desert under the full moon. It was beautiful and scary. And, it was, to me, that was much more fun than any of the quests, was just having that experience,
I'm thinking about like a few things. One is like in playing Spider-Man on PlayStation, I feel like it's almost like micromanaging what the open world is with like taking pictures around New York City. Like the whole
Yeah.
photography part, you can keep doing, but like I don't know that I want to see like, XP for that. I just want to do that. You know.
You
I
don't want to get
I know,
credit for all the pigeons that you take pictures of.
right? I know.
Yeah.
All the landmarks I get credit for like a
Yeah.
picture of like a girder, and I get like credit for the whole building, an offset picture. I remember like during lockdown, my son was like seeing Santa Claus in Animal Crossing because that was it.
Aw.
Like those sorts of experiences I think about.
Mm.
But then also like there's the idea of Stuart Hall and like the idea that you should do like that you need to do this like compliant reading and like play the game first and read the text first. Then there's like this negotiated getting to oppositional. So like in a book like Where the Wild Things Are, students or kids or teachers may read it just as what's on the page, that basic story. Where if it's when you go to negotiate it and you start thinking about, where he is king in his world, where he is in control, and same with oppositional, like when you start thinking about that maybe the wild things were actually more nurturing than the adults in his real life. And in a game like Lost Words, there's some interesting parallels because the protagonist in that game also escapes to her own imagined world. So beyond the playing the game the way the players decide to play the game, there is also the negotiated and oppositional interpretations of the game.
Mm-hmm. So Yeah, mind blown. On the topic of students, was there anything? Because toward the end of the book, you feature narratives and excerpts from students that you asked to talk about meaningful play in their own experience. Did anything surprise you in that?
Yeah, and it wasn't just students. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to be really pithy on this one. I was going to say we actually gave them a very brief prompt, and almost all of them were exactly what we wanted.
Yeah, it's crazy because
we're reaching out to you because we think you are the kind of person who thinks and feels a lot when you play video games. That's the prompt, right? It's so good.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So basic, we put it in the book. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember one of the first ones that let's see if I can find it here. One of the first ones that we got was about, here it is. It's about a game called Season, A Letter to the Future, right? And it was so touching. It was basically a character who has to leave home, and their world is ending, and their mother is going to be gone with the world that's ending, and he basically has to choose which parts of the world his mother is going to forget in order to sort of move on, right? And I don't know, there's just something about this, the cost that this character has to pay, and the fact that the student, when they wrote this, I don't know, it was just so vulnerable. I guess they wrote this thing like, don't race, be quiet, you'll miss it. Everything around me takes on an urgency, as does every word ever to be spoken. How quickly did I come to miss this world less than 20 minutes after hitting start on the game? I linger, I weep, I turn my mother's words over and again in my mind, imbue everything with meaning. And it just was so vulnerable, and it was shocking to me. Of course, it came from a student who I knew would write something great, but I didn't realize it would be like, I don't know, just so open and so wonderful.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of good quotes toward the back of the book that, if nothing else, I mean, obviously I'm going to reference this book for a multitude of reasons, but that's the one that I just want to tap. Like anytime there's the video game effects debates, I just want to like pull out a quote and be like, read this, read. This is how video games affect people.
You know, it increased the page numbers and all that. Like the word count significantly went up with that chapter.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a fight. I mean, it was like, okay, you can do it. But we did really want to keep that chapter in the book.
It's true. We were like at the very end, we're like, we might have to cut a chapter.
No.
Yeah. But we can't cut this chapter because it's so beautiful. Like there's so many really beautiful examples here. Yeah. So
well,
we
thanks
didn't have
MIT.
to.
Thanks MIT for keeping it
yeah,
in.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for letting us keep the examples. Yeah.
I mean, you could have, I guess, talked about it on this one podcast this one time when I asked the final question about the research left behind. But no, the book is much broader, much stronger with it in. The penultimate question I'd like to ask before we get into the research left behind is about the role of streaming, because we like to be meta on this channel. One of the, of course, always I'm thinking about streaming in some capacity, but how do you think streaming impacts how we read games, if at all? Both in terms of the viewers and also, I guess, the streamer.
It's a great
You want to
question.
go first?
I mean, I think it models how a lot of, especially younger people, think that we should talk about games, because obviously there's not a lot of modeling out there of the idea of reading games.
Mm-hmm.
There are some. You do it yourself, and I know that, we quoted some folks who seemed on the cusp of it, really. To even if they're not calling it that themselves. It's Here's the thing: reading a game, like reading a book, it's a private thing.
Yeah.
So doing it in public is pretty brave, especially in the public that we have today, right? Where everybody's so afraid to be vulnerable
Oh, yeah.
and real, right? Everybody's got their snarky masks up, right? Yep. And snark is not how you can approach something and be real about it. So it's a difficult thing, because if you want to read something and stream it while you're reading it, you have to be vulnerable.
Yep.
And to do that is difficult.
There are thoughtful streamers out there. I mean, I was doing a talk and using a clip about the game Venba, which is a puzzle game, a cookie puzzle game, but also there's a lot that you can bring to the experience. If you are a child of immigrants or of the same South Asian background, and I found just an interesting TikTok about somebody discussing their personal connections they had to that.
Yeah.
We try, but again, we suggest there's only so much we could put in a book, but we do think about and write about in the last chapter. Well, things that work in how we teach reading books. Like if you don't just finish a book in school, let's say, or outside of school, even if you're reading socially in a book club, there are discussion questions, and there are also scaffolds that are given, because just because you got to the end of a book doesn't mean that you understand all of the different interpretations and experiences other readers may have as well. So we suggest, adapting. It's interesting when you look at English language arts and those types of teachings. They do often say games. Like we quote Perry Nodelman a lot. He writes "and games," but I feel like that's, like it's like a list of things, like and podcasts and film and television and games, but nobody really has quite picked up enough on games and the uniqueness of games. So we suggest you can do things like having a reader response journal, but with games, like a player response journal, or also the idea of a play aloud, which Tracy does in her class, which is actually quite similar to in classrooms. They do read alouds. In elementary classrooms, you'll do a read aloud, and then there's readers theater. You act it out. There's book clubs. There's literature circles where it's almost like a game where you go around and you have this discussion. So that's a great scaffold and model for how to do this, because it's not inherently natural, because so often we think about the tropes that go along with games, like winning or like, those sorts of things.
Right. All right. Well, we're almost out of time, so I have to ask the last question, which is the title of the podcast. Tell me about the research left behind in The Well-Read Game.
It's in the director's cut.
Yeah. I think it's funny that you call it I think it's funny that you asked us, you sent us a question as you called it the research rabbit hole, because that was sort of a joke that we had between ourselves, right, Matt?
Yeah.
It's like, are we going down the rabbit hole here? Exactly.
That's great, but that doesn't really belong in this book.
It's like I was like I felt like I was the threshold guardian of let's keep stay on target, right? That's my job, is because Matt has a never ending things that he can references and all this, that he can pull in, and it would be great. But I was like going, yeah, we only got so many words. Stay on target, stay on target. Right? So, it's funny. The one big thing that I can think of, and Matt, you might be able to think of some more, but the one big thing is we originally wanted to have the first chapter of the book be almost like an encapsulation of the entire theory, so that you could just assign one chapter. And we tried writing it, and it became like the world's large, the memo. We called it the memo chapter, and it was, but we tried writing it that way. Yeah, the writer's journey. Those are the writer's journey book is written that way. But the thing is that it became the world's largest chapter. It was essentially, we were like writing the book, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And then it was like, well, what are the other chapters gonna be? And eventually we realized that, we had to really walk people through it, and that this idea of having a memo first was just not going to fly. So we couldn't use the original structure, and it died. It died a death. It's in a file called the parking lot in our which is where we parked everything that we weren't going to use, but maybe we might need later.
I mean, it could be in a blog. We also kitchen synced, if I can use that as a verb, the book proposal. So, like, we had different sections. Like, we were going to walk people through how we did this for the Walden a Game curriculum, and that's just became way in the weeds.
Yeah. That just wasn't gonna be interesting. It was like, if you had to cut the examples of all these like beautiful readings that people sent us, or a kind of dry walkthrough of, how we built the Walden curriculum to help kids do reflective reading. It's like, no, that's easy choice. Yeah.
I am obsessed.
So a couple of things
with finding out what people call the folder or the document where they just drop everything that they had to cut. I'm obsessed with finding the name.
That's from a former professor that I used to work with, and she used to call it the parking lot.
I love it.
Yeah, but so that's our file. I just opened it today to see what was in it. You don't want to know. Just crap is in it. We did better without that stuff. Yeah.
It's not like Guillermo del Toro's like beautiful journals of art that never made it into his film.
But the thing is at the time, you're like, this is the best thing I've ever written.
I better save it.
Yeah.
I better
keep
it's like
it. An aha moment. I got to put it in my notes app and tell Tracy after this dog walk,
Yeah, exactly. Everything happens after the dog walk. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, well, we are sadly at time, so it is time to say goodbye to the stream and each other. But chat, join me in thanking Dr. Matt Farber and Professor Tracy Fullerton for their time, their patience, and their research, and of course, this book, which is incredible and amazing. So, do you both have anything you would like to plug? Any new publications on the horizon, or conference stuff, or social media?
Well, coming up next year, we're going to actually have a special edition of the Well Played Journal that is well-read games. So it's a well-read, well-played.
That's so cool.
So keep your eye out for that. Where a bunch of other people write about games that they have read well.
And is that who's publishing that?
Play Story Press.
Play Story Press. Got it.
Yeah.
I'm actually making a note.
True.
Because I absolutely will buy that.
And I guess besides plugging the book, I'm going to be at the National Council of Teachers of English, NCTE, the conference in Denver. And I have a poster, which will have this book on it too, and talking about the book.
Awesome.
People will be there. I'm also very excited. I mean, it's a cool thing that NCTE is embracing, reading games.
It is cool.
Yeah,
They're pretty
I
open
agree.
to
cool thing.
ideas, right?
It helps
Absolutely.
establish the,
Yeah.
legitimacy of the field, even though a lot of folks I know got their grants pulled because there was games in the title. Womp womp womp. What a time to be alive.
Let's not end on a sad note.
Yeah.
There's still Lego grants.
Yeah, let's talk about that dragon cancer. No. That's like the classic game that's referenced in this book.
Sadness. Bring back the cat.
Yeah, where's the cat?
Come on out.
Yeah.
Come on.
Amazing. Amazing. Here's a screenshot of Subnautica. There we go. Subnautica is great. Okay, well, thank you so much for being on the program. Thank you so much for sharing your research. Thank you so much for letting us see your pets. Sorry, podcast listeners. You'll have to check them out. Aw, dog. What kind of dog?
Aw.
Like a coonhound mix, like a rescue dog.
Aw, that's amazing. We love rescues. All right. Thank you so much again to Shawn.
She has her own nanny cam.
Oh. Thank you so much again to Shawn, Pierre, and Adrianna Poindexter for the creation and use of the theme song, to Nifty Chris, the Twitch moderator, for all the classroom management, and to you, the viewers and listeners. Without all of you, this production would not be possible. Listeners, viewers, chatters, if you like this stream, this VOD, this podcast, make sure you are following with notifications turned on so that you know when we go live again and you know when the next recording goes up. If you're listening after the fact, you can head over to twitch.tv/professor_Ashley to follow the next stream live. You can also find me on almost every social media platform as professor_Ashley. Then Research Left Behind we're now kind of in the middle of our second season, which is exciting. And we'll be live again on November 20th with Dr. Marcus Carter talking about his new book on virtual reality. So if you aren't already on the Discord, please join so you can stay up to date with the program and you'll know when we'll next be live. Good night, everyone, and we will see you on November 20th.